Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. And this week, I just want to discuss a lot of the recent events that have been revolving around Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Because, man, for somebody who just made sporadic appearances over the past, decade and a half, all of a sudden he is back in the spotlight. And I'm going to kind of hit on some things. And I'll say, obviously, these are my opinions. I will try to uh, wrap those opinions in facts, but it's just the way I'm looking at it. And that's why I'm going to title this as "The Rock Turns." And by the way, it's a play on words for the soap opera as the world turns. And because that's what wrestling is kind of a soap opera. But first, I want to go ahead and give the contact information for the show. If you'd like to email the show about any show ideas, topics, anything, any kind of feedback, any criticism, constructive criticism, please email the show at armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find it on Instagram. You can find it on Twitter @bookingarmchair. You can find it on TikTok. You just do a search for Armchair Booking, or the links for all these social media platforms are in the show notes. Obviously, we're on YouTube if you're watching this. And Spreaker, who actually hosts the audio portion of it, they have actually added a feature now where you can actually donate money to the show. There was something they added. I'm not going to say, hey, you need to go donate money, but if you want to, hey, you know what, feel free. I'm not going to argue with you. But and also speaking of audio, because right now the show is on every audio platform that I can think of, including some third-party ones that are pulling off of the ones that I actually upload to. But if you actually give the show a 5-star review or a 5-star rating, and then you give it a review, I'll read the review on the show. If you don't want me to mention your name, I won't. Just let me know, because I will default to, hey, you put the review out there, because, and if it's out there for the open, anybody can see it. And I made, like, Apple will give like a straight name, so it's not necessarily the person's name, so that one is usually fine, usually. But if you don't want me to say the name, just, reach out and tell me. And, and you can do that on Apple. You can do it on Spotify. I know you can actually give reviews, but in the other ones, if they don't allow you the option to give a review, because I'm not going to tell somebody, hey, you need to switch your platform just for this, because that'd be kind of selfish of me. But if that happens, just give the show the rating, 5-star rating, do a screenshot, email me at armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com. And with your rating or your review there, show me the rating, show me the review, and then I'll read it from there. And lastly, I also have my other podcast, which is called The Cubicle Chat, which is actually where I talk about topics other than wrestling. Occasionally it might slip in, but it's not going to be an overall topic for any one particular episode. And that one, here lately over the past few weeks, I've actually got a new format on that one. Sort of got a new recording schedule. I'm actually recording that one 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. This show here, it's still kind of tentative on what's going to happen as far as like the recording schedule. As you can see, I'm running solo. My usual co-host Waylon, he's still on a hiatus, and obviously, we wish him all our thoughts and prayers towards him, because he's just going through a lot. He's got to work some stuff out. I mean, it happens. It's life. And everybody who I've talked to, they really want to see Dwaylen come back. And I do appreciate their support for the show, because Dwaylen is also one of my best friends, and that's beyond the show. We were friends first. We've been friends since high school, so I want to make sure that the person is actually doing better first, instead of this. After all, at the end of the day, this is just a podcast. That's what it comes down to. So, but on to what you tuned in to hear. Okay, so Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which, by the way, for the rest of this show, because we're now going to be talking about the wrestling character, we're not going to be talking about the actor, the not director, but the manager of his company, $7 Entertainment. And, that's Dwayne Johnson. Now we're going to be talking about The Rock. And so now The Rock, his career has once again kind of come full circle. Because if you keep up with wrestling, if you keep up with the history of wrestling, you know that The Rock actually started out as Rocky Maivia. Actually, he started out as Flex Kavana. He was wrestling in Memphis. This is where he was doing his training. It was a developmental territory. He was Flex Kavana, and then after however many months, he moved up to WWE, and he was Rocky Maivia. Rocky, named after his father, Maivia, named after his maternal grandfather, Peter Maivia, High Chief Peter Maivia. So he took the two names of the two men he admired the most, just, especially when it comes to wrestling, and he combined it, Rocky Maivia. And he was a, oh golly gee shucks babyface, and the fans just weren't buying it because this was right about the time that Steve Austin was also making his transformation into Stone Cold with the 316, and now then you hear come the Rock or Rocky Maivia with this kind of boring, kind of a nerdy character in a way, and the fans just weren't having it, and so he was being booed at every chance they got, and they even started chanting "Die Rocky Die," even when his dad Rocky Johnson actually helped out the Rock in, I believe it was WrestleMania 12, where he fought off the Sultan, which ironically enough, the Sultan was actually being played by the man later known as Fatu, who is the Rock's, kind of a blood cousin, but they are related. And that, and his sons and his other cousin, Roman Reigns, will actually come into play later on. I'm talking about Fatu, his sons. So as it went on, he was a face. Fans are booing him. He gets hurt. He's out for a while, and he comes back. Well, when he comes back, and if I remember right, reading his book, The Rock himself decided, you know what? They're booing me anyway. Let's make me a heel. And by the way, this is one of the best things The Rock could have ever done for his career, because he comes out and he has joined the Nation of Domination. That was the faction that was actually ruled by, at the time, Farouk, also known as Ron Simmons. And, well, he comes out and they start screaming, they start chanting the "Die Rocky Die." And then he all of a sudden starts "Die Rocky Die." And he says, "I am no longer known as Rocky Maivia. I am now known as The Rock." And off you go. So The Rock got over more as a heel, and it was really because of his promo work. His in-ring work was okay. I've never been a huge proponent of all of his in-ring work. Um, uh, his finish move is an elbow drop. Plain and simple. I mean, it is a simple elbow drop with theatrics, is one way I've seen it described. But it's over. By the way, I'm not gonna totally squash on that, because my favorite wrestler when I was a kid was Jimmy the Boogie Wiggy Man Valiant. Guess what his finishing move was? It was an elbow drop. And even then, I was thinking, well, that was kind of actually his. I'll say it was a double elbow drop, because he would throw them into the ropes, catch them with the elbow when they came off to knock them down, and then immediately drop the elbow on them, and then pin them, or he had a sleeper hold. Well, The Rock, the people's elbow, everybody loves it. He pulls off the elbow pad, throws it into the crowd. And then he has the rock bottom to kind of set it up. Now, the rock bottom, I will say this, the rock bottom's legit. That is a move that if you actually were able to do that to somebody in a real fight, oh, it would actually, it would get the job done. And his other moves, though, I mean, his punches are not decent looking. His sharpshooter, not so much. His sharpshooter, to be honest with you, it looks sloppy. But his just the way he looks when he does his stuff makes everything look explosive. The Rock, even right now, he just looks tremendous. And he's in great shape. And actually, and people brought up to me, well, is he in ring shape? And I get it. I'm not a wrestler myself and never have been, but I still get that. Okay, he's all pumped up and he's all jacked up. I mean, and he probably, he's shredded. He has very little body fat on him. And that man's 51 years old. I mean, he's older. I'm 50. He's older than I am. And no, but I mean, he looks great. And of course, even back then, when he was part of the Nation Domination, and he still looked good, then he actually, I think, honestly, I mean, he looks better now than what he did even back then. I mean, if that could be a thing, because I mean, you got to think that was almost 30 years ago, so he was in his 20s. And so, but eventually, He leaves the Nation Domination, and then he ends up joining the corporation. He's Vince's corporate champion. This is when Vince, Mr. McMahon, and all that, and the screw job, and Vince becomes the bad guy, the most hated person in wrestling. And now all of a sudden, Vince McMahon's over as a character. I don't want to spend too much time on his name, though. Keep up with wrestling, you understand why. But eventually, The Rock is turned face because the fans had started cheering him anyway. The fans loved it when he came out. His catchphrase, if you smell what The Rock is cooking, which was actually something that was it wasn't something he wrote out. Hey, what if I say this? What if I say that? No, I mean it just happened during an interview with Jennifer Flowers during one of the WrestleManias. I believe it was WrestleMania 14, and either 14 or 15. I think it was 14. That's when he started. If you smell what I'm cooking, and then it started, and that's when the fans hold up the signs. Oh, if you smell the rock, and that's when he started. If you smell what the rock is cooking, it's the beginning of his theme song. As soon as you hear the "if you smell" and have the drums, and the fans will just go absolutely crazy. And the fans started imitating, not in a bad way, but in a good way. They started saying, because I even saw people at work doing, if you smell what I'm cooking, if you smell, and I saw it like on a talk show. Yes, I used to watch talk shows like, Goofy Jerry Springer and all them. Um, Thankfully I stopped, but anyway, but you saw people imitate on there. So, I mean, the Rock's catchphrases were actually make it um, the general public, mainstream. So he stayed a face more or less. I mean, I know there was periodic times until about a week ago, and he solidified his turn last night on SmackDown. Now, the other times I could say where, okay, The Rock was a heel. One, it was just because it was during one match, and it actually happened during the match, and it was only for that match. WrestleMania 18 up in Toronto against Hulk Hogan. Of course, Rock comes in, he's the face. Hogan is the heel, and he's kind of retaining that Hollywood Hogan character. He comes in there and he's wearing like the black tights, and he's representing NWO, and he's Hollywood Hogan. And the fans started booing The Rock and cheering Hogan because they were remembering Hogan was like the good guy, the ultimate hero back when, you know 10 years prior, before he went to the before he went to WCW, and actually 20 years prior. I say 10, actually it's about 20 years prior. But he had been, with Hulkamania Runs Wild. That match, he and The Rock, they did an audible mid-match. They changed the script right there. Because as much as I want to say about Hulk Hogan, and I'm not going to get into his either because of um, a lot of things he's been accused of. And I know here recently he's actually made a more positive turn. Hopefully it's for real. I say that as a person, not, you know, um, as like a wrestling podcaster, but just as a person on the personal side of things. Something he was just in the news for recently. I'm hoping it's legit and sincere, because that's not something that you fake in my eyes. But anyway, um, well, with Hulkamania and him and The Rock having to make this switch mid match, Hogan knew how to do that because Hogan was trained old school style where you call it in the ring. And if you see some of Hogan's matches in Japan from that era, the early 80s, I mean, he was actually pulling all kinds of moves you never saw him do in the States. So he could do it. And The Rock had been around it enough that he knew how to call things on the fly as well. And so that match ended up being a great match. And, they did it organically. Of course, the next day, Hogan had turned. Rock also stayed face after that match. He was a heel for that match just because the fans wanted to cheer Hogan, and they were booing The Rock because he was going against Hogan. But The Rock was a heel for that match. And then when his feud 10 years later with John Cena, with the two matches of a lifetime, or once in a lifetime, and then, well, apparently the next year they found another lifetime. But they had the two matches at WrestleMania 28 and 29. And The Rock, depending on who you ask, may have been kind of a heel during that, because this was kind of during the era of really, the Super Cena when it was happening. And after that, of course, I mean, The Rock only made his periodic appearances. He showed up at WrestleMania 30, and then he showed up a few years later, and he ended up having like a 5-second match against now his name was Eric the Red, or Eric Redbeard. And it wasn't Luke Harper. Okay, excuse me while I actually try to figure out this. Eric Rowan. Wow. I'm just dumb. I'm telling you, I'm getting old. But when The Rock made his appearance at the WrestleMania, and he did, it was basically a 5-second match against Eric Rowan. I actually was not a fan of the way they did that, because I was and still am really a Wyatt family fan. Unfortunately, we do know Bray Wyatt and Luke Harper, John Brody. They have both passed on, or John Huber. They have both passed on, and so that is very unfortunate. But The Rock, he made that appearance. Every once in a while, he would come back just to like pop in and say hi. And the other time he came in, this was a time where he was actually booed, but it wasn't because the fans were trying to turn him heel. It was because, not coincidentally, he was supporting Roman. This was at the Royal Rumble in 2016 when, I'm sorry, 2015, when the Roman won the Rumble, and The Rock had come in and helped Roman clear house, throughout the Big Show, throughout Kane, and The Rock was there to show support for Roman, saying, "Hey, look, I support him. You should support him too." Well, the fans had already decided they did not want to support Roman, and it was because Roman, as a face, was just being pushed, 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 pushed. Well, at the time, Roman was not ready for that, and I will, always go down with it. Roman, when he was given that push in starting around 2015, on through when he announced he had leukemia, unfortunately, I mean, that's kind of what it took to get everybody to shut up. He was not booked very well. His promo skills were horrible. And I'm not going to say that he actually came up with these promos. I mean, come on, suffering succotash, really. He's quoting Sylvester the Cat, a cartoon character. I'm pretty sure Roman did not come up with that. Somebody wrote that for him and said, "Here, say this," because we do know during this time that there were very, very, very few who were allowed to actually do their promos impromptu. Or, of course, Rock being one of them, John Cena being another, Paul Heyman, of course, who is now the legal counsel. I'll just go ahead and say that he's basically the manager of the Rock. But therefore, a few years, Dwayne and I were both saying, turn Roman heel, give him Paul Heyman as a mouthpiece. And eventually that's what happened, except for heel Roman doesn't need Paul Heyman as a mouthpiece. Heel Roman actually knows how to cut promos. But Roman was a face. Fans hated him after a while. Poor booking handled by the WWE, because he just was not booked right. Eventually, when he comes back, eventually when he does turn heel, and I want to say he came back, he had the unfortunate, he had to leave WWE for a bit because, I mean, the real person, Joe Anawahi, had leukemia in the past. Well, the leukemia had came back, and so he had to leave. He had to take care of that. When he came back, of course, everybody was cheering him, and then they stopped cheering him again. All of a sudden, okay, well, now we're going to go back to what we were doing before. Boo. Roman eventually turned heel, and that's when the tribal chief, that's when he was beating up his own cousins, Jay and Jimmy Uso, who were the sons of Fatu, who was the Sultan at WrestleMania 12 when he went against Rocky Maivia. See, once again, we've come full circle. But now Roman is very over during this time. The Bloodline, they have Roman, and then of course the Usos, they all come back together, and then they have Sami Zayn and all that going on, and then eventually Solo Sikoa, he comes in. I mean, they got this big faction, And there was always rumors going around that, well, they're going to bring the Rock back. He's going to go against Roman for the tribal chief title, which is a real title. I mean, now I'm not Samoan, I'm not Polynesian, but I'm going to guess they actually don't decide the tribal chief based on a scripted wrestling match. I'm pretty sure of that, but I mean, but it is a real title, and it's a very prestigious title. And so now, how we got to right now, The Rock makes his appearance, and he kind of alludes to the head of the table because that's what Roman has been going by. They've is another moniker. They've become the head of the table, Roman Reigns, tribal chief, Roman Reigns. And now that The Rock has come back, he's saying, well, is that the head of the table? After in Roman, he's into, whatever day of his title reign now, day 1,400, and I don't know. It's a lot. And so they start alluding to that. People go, oh, they're finally going to get this. Okay, but then you have everything else starting to happen. All the lawsuits outside of all this start to happen with Vince, and now others are being brought in. And well, Cody wins the Rumble. Not a huge surprise there, because Cody Rhodes has this thing about finishing the story. And well, he wins the Rumble. It's a no-brainer. He's going to go against Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40. But we've already introduced The Rock. The Rock has come in and alluded he wants to go after the title. And so then they say, well, we're going to have Cody go against Seth Rollins. It's like, no, that's not. And that's when the fans just, once again, The Rock became a heel the first time because of the fans. That was back in 1997. Now here we are in 2024, almost 17 years later, and The Rock once again is becoming a heel based on fan reaction to something going on. Except for this time, this was not aimed directly at The Rock. This was aimed directly at the situation, because they were more behind Cody. They did not want The Rock going against Roman. They didn't want the Roman defending against anybody but Cody. Now, I don't know whose idea it was this time. I don't know who, when they actually decided this. Was it a long time ago? Was it now? But now The Rock has used social media, and they had the press conference, the kickoff show press conference, which, by the way, everybody who watched that and listened to it, thank you so much. That's actually obviously, I could not believe the I'm not going to say it was a ton of views, but it was quite a bit of views, like in the first few days. And if somebody watched it because of the title I gave it and it was misleading, I apologize. That was definitely not my intention. I thought about that later on, because I'm not affiliated with any wrestling companies, and especially WWE. So I apologize if that's why you watched it, but hopefully you enjoyed it. But when you saw Rock slap Cody, and you're like, oh, okay, and then because The Rock is saying he's not going to be saying that about my family. And of course, The Rock had just said stuff about Cody's family, so, but that's the mark of a heel is you can't do what I can do, what I'm allowed to do, or I'm allowed to do it, but you're not, type thing. And then last night, if you had any kind of doubt over where The Rock is, last night he came out on the last 20 minutes actually of SmackDown, and which actually, I was wondering what was going on, because SmackDown announcers, I don't remember them ever saying, this is our last match of the show. Okay. But then I looked at my watch and I'm like, man, they got a lot of time left. How was this the last match of the show? Well, you heard Roman's music, and you heard The Rock's music. They all came out and they're speaking. And of course, Roman's out there with Jimmy Uso, with Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman. And of course, The Rock comes out. The first thing Rock does, he grabs a microphone and he says, this crowd is the biggest indoor crowd for an event ever in the history of Salt Lake City and ever in the history of Utah. The event, SmackDown last night, was actually held in Salt Lake City. And then, everybody's cheering and of course, because they're still all about The Rock, even though The Rock has been, literally slapping Cody. And then The Rock turns on him and he starts berating the fans. And then he refers to them having multiple wives and all the children and everything else, which is making kind of an allusion to Utah being the head of the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church um, has had polygamy, multiple wives in his past, and actually not legally, but now, I mean, you have these men who have, whatever. It is what it is. But he makes an allusion to that, and then he makes he's just really just laying into the fans. And then, of course, he also refers to the Cody Crybabies. That's what he's calling all the fans who are basically crying because Cody didn't get to finish the story, and The Rock also talks about it. So The Rock is going not just a little bit of heel, no, he's like going full blown heel now, and it's bringing a lot more interest now. People are talking about, oh man, The Rock is done turned into a bad guy again, and now this was not. Now he blindsided the local fans in Salt Lake City last night with his, "Hey, you're the biggest crowd ever, yay!" Celebrate that. But now I'm going to slam you, and but him turning heel this case is not a total surprise. It's not like Hogan in 1996 when he turned and joined the NWO, because Hulk Hogan was the wrestling superhero, and whether you liked him in the ring or not, I mean, his character, that's a story for another day. But Hogan turning, though, was a huge surprise. The Rock is not, just because we saw everything leading up to it. But now I do kind of wonder, because I mean, I'm liking the way this is going. And like my friend BC Hunter, who was on the show a few weeks ago, he actually helped me out. He stepped in as a guest co-host on his show, though, Wrestling with the Truth, which is kind of funny because he had not put an episode in a long time. But he actually said, "I'm embarrassed to be a wrestling fan," and it was because of the fans' reaction to Cody. The Rock, his daughter, she had to get rid of her. She had to deactivate her social media because she was getting death threats. So The Rock turning heel, nobody should be surprised about that, because the same people who are making death threats against his own daughter, would you want to have their support? Would you want to be in line with them? I wouldn't. Doesn't matter if it's a work or not. But people were making legitimate death threats against his daughter because something had nothing to do with her. And really it has nothing to do with The Rock. He's not the one that said, "Hey, put me in over Cody." But so now The Rock, he actually said, "If you smell," and then he stopped. He said, "We're not doing sing along time with The Rock. This is not story time." He said, "No, I don't want you to do this along with me." He said, "If you smell what the Bloodline is cooking." So now The Rock he's fully immersed into the Bloodline. If you remember what happened with the Nation of Domination, even though The Rock, I mean, he was still fairly green. He had been in the wrestling business not even 2 years at the time, but he eventually became like the focal point, and it's because of his charisma, his mic skills. And so eventually, he was booted out of the faction, left him, whatever you want to say. But now he's doing the same thing with the Bloodline. Now, this is a story that has been building for a couple of years. There's always been rumors, oh, they want to bring The Rock back, him and Roman, because of the head of the table and the tribal chief. Now, though, he's part of it, which means, though, he is supposed to do what Roman says, because Roman is the head of the table. Roman is the tribal chief. But you're going to have The Rock. No, this right here, I mean, it's almost transparent that it's going to lead to The Rock either leaving the Bloodline or booting Roman out of the bloodline, which I don't see that happening because I think this might be the Rock's last hurrah. But I do kind of wonder if this is actually going to do any damage to Roman's career because he's supposed to be, the faction leader. He's supposed to be the leader of their group. But do you honestly think that The Rock is going to, after so many years, I mean, this is the character, is going to still make it listen to somebody else tell him what to do? It's not, it just doesn't make any sense. And so that's why I have a feeling, so it really, I don't want to see it hurt Roman. I'm getting kind of bored with the title reign, especially so because he only defends the title like, 8 times a year. That to me, when you compare it against other wrestling champions, even Hogan was defending his title a few times a week. Flair was defending his title more times in a week than what there are days in a week because he was working twice on some days. Roman, doing it 8 times a year is just, to me, for me, it's not cutting it. But either way, this is going to lead to, and I'm going to guess SummerSlam because, of course, after WrestleMania, that's going to be the biggest event. But after SummerSlam, after WrestleMania, it's going to lead into The Rock and Roman at SummerSlam. I don't remember where SummerSlam is this year, but it's going to be at SummerSlam. And, so because The Rock eventually, they're going to splinter. The Rock's saying, I'm going to make sure Cody is still going to walk out a loser. But something's going to happen. And I personally would prefer The Rock do the honors for Roman when he loses, because I have a feeling this might be The Rock's last hurrah when it comes to actually being a wrestler, because he's never really had that final match. And so this should be it, because The Rock, by the time SummerSlam happens, he's going to be 52 years old. And it's about time for him to go ahead and, step away from the ring, because he's also an executive now. And if you're an executive, you should not be in the middle of that, because you have executive stuff you need to be doing, not getting in the ring and taking a spot away from somebody who's actually putting in the work day in and day out. But that's just my take. That's my take on it. Now that, I do wonder, was this planned from the beginning? When I say the beginning, like before Cody won the Rumble, or as The Rock was coming back, was this planned then? Or was this organic because of the reaction to them saying, well, Cody's going to go against Seth Rollins. We're going to, we're not going to, maybe it was because the fan reaction was just ridiculous. Already mentioned that. Death threats made against family members, which is stupid. And that's why I agree with BC when he says he was ashamed to be a wrestling fan. I'm in full agreement with him, because it was the way people reacted was just ridiculous. Yeah, but with the new leadership that's in place now, because we know the writing team from just 6 months ago is gone, and you can tell that because the product is getting better, like on Raw and SmackDown. You can tell that the stories are getting better. You see the way the commentators are speaking, that they no longer have somebody in their ear telling them exactly what to say, and then saying don't allude to somebody's past. They're basically, there's no other companies besides this one. Now they're starting to bring up, this person's actually been wrestling for such and such years, but it's just been with other companies. Now they're here, because before they didn't even want to acknowledge there were other companies. They were in lawsuits with other companies that they didn't want to acknowledge. It was kind of strange. But now we have fresher ideas that actually make sense. Either one, right from the beginning or organically, is possible, because all the people involved now know how to change on the fly. I mentioned that with Rock doing it literally on the fly with Hulk Hogan. So this one on the fly, but a little bit more time to plan out, because instead of 10 minutes to figure this out, you've got a few days to a week to figure it out. Okay, let's go heel. Boom, done, over. All right, cool. So that is all I got to say about that. I do have one more announcement. There is a fan fest that is happening in Chillicothe, Ohio. I've actually mentioned this before. I did not think I'd be able to go to it. And it was actually because of a money issue, because everybody knows I'm actually still between jobs, not for lack of luck. In fact, I mean, I've been applying almost, well, I've been looking every day, applying whenever I see something that would fit. Um, and it's been a lot of applications that I put in for different positions. I do have a recruiter I've been talking with about a contract position, something I can do remote. But I didn't think I'd be able to go to this fan fest. It's called the Reunion 3 Cavalcade of Legends. It's in Chillicothe, and it's actually been put on by Bobby Fulton. He's actually a native of Chillicothe, Ohio. And this will be this is the fifth one he's put on. I've been to all five, and a lot of names there. Of course, funny thing, I've been to so many of them now. Over half the people who are going to be there, I've actually already met. But I'm able to go, but not because I'm paying to get in. I'm actually going to be there as a helper. Myself and Randy, Rescue Randy, who's been on the show before. He and I are going to be going up there to help, and this is actually coordinated by the NWF wrestler Big Mama. I spoke with her last Saturday at the NWF show in Mount Orb, Northern Wrestling Federation, for those who don't know what NWF is. But I spoke with her, and she's actually going to have a match there because they always do the fan fest and it's followed up by an actual wrestling event. And she's going to have a match. She is the organization there. She is the women's champion for the organization. It's World Classic, Big Time Wrestling. She is the women's champion. She is going to be in a match, or a title versus title match, against the NWA women's champion. And so it's a huge, huge thing for her. And I told her I didn't know if I'd go. And she was actually kind of disappointed because, I mean, it's such a big thing for her. And so, but she pulls, she got us in. So now it looks like we're going to be going. And I could not be more happier. So, but yeah, if you are in the area, go check it out. It'll be a good time. The fan fests are always a fun time. I mean, you get to meet the wrestlers, you get to take pictures with them. I will tell you, it is not cheap. The price of doing the meets, and some of the, certain ones are actually, you're paying upwards of $200, $400. If you're just doing picture autograph and or a combo, you could be spending, like, at the low end, $40 to $50 a piece. If you're doing the combo, you may be going $30 for a picture, or $30 for an autograph, or $50 for both, or 25, 25, 40. And, so it's getting big, well, to say thanks, inflation, but it happens. But it's a good time. There's always merchandise there. There's other podcasters. There's been a few that have actually had their own booths. I've never set that up because in fact, maybe that's something I'll look at in the future. We'll just have to see. But definitely, if you're in the area, go check it out. And that's actually something, after that, I will actually have a show. Well, I will talk about everything that happened there. But in the meantime, everybody stay safe, especially right now because it's snowing like a mother outside. And, stay safe, be careful out there, and God bless.